conversation today. I do have some things to share with you, and some exercises that we can do together that I hope that you find helpful in guiding your own board. I feel so. My background: I'm a school founder. I have been a school leader. I've been an educator for a very long time, and I've been in the charter sector about 20 years, leading schools in Georgia. I know you can tell I'm from Georgia, and country. And so I love this work. And a lot of the work that I do is with charter school boards, governance, strong governance, and also with school leaders and helping school leaders and boards work collaboratively together. I think all of you are school leaders, and I don't think you can do your job and do it well if you don't have a strong board with the right background and experience and understanding of what good governance looks like. It can undermine you. It can make work less efficient. And so it's just my commitment to help you to navigate that with your boards. So with that, without further ado, I am an educator at heart. I'm going to use Nearpod. Are y'all familiar with Nearpod? We're going to hopefully this will work so we can engage a little bit, be interactive. Hey, Jesse, it's good to see you. So I'm not going to have to share my screen. You should be able to see it, and everybody can just pop in. I'll make sure I have everybody on before we get. And then we will have some engagement. Please don't feel like you have to sit here silently. Please ask questions. Please push. It's fine. And let's just make this a really meaningful time together. Did everybody see the link in the chat? Thanks. See you. So we got Terrence and Wayne, Jesse and Cheryl. Is it Dara or Dara? Oh, she might have stepped away.
Dara.
Dara. Thanks, Dara. Okay. Dara, you Gina able to access the link? Okay, just waiting on two.
Are
you having a
I'm
hard?
not able to click on. I'm not as familiar with Zoom.
That's okay. That's okay.
Not letting me click on. I can see there's a message, but for some reason.
Do you see the link in the chat?
Yeah, that's where I'm looking. It's up there. It just popped up. Maybe I had a. I don't know.
That's okay.
Should or something. Thank you.
No worries. Great. Not a problem at all. Technology is a funny thing. I struggle with sometimes. Okay. Sure, she has an opportunity. Wonderful. Okay, everybody, can you see the screen? Making sure that we have everything in place. Thank you so much for hopping on. So I want to talk to you about our learning targets for today. And there are basically three things that I'm hoping to accomplish. The first is for you to be able to understand why the composition of your board and the diversity of it, of skills and experience and all the other demographic factors for it, and how that relates to your school and how to drive that. I want to show you some strategies and practice with you so that you can guide your board on doing this for themselves. And so we're going to do some exercises with a mock school. And then the third thing I want to do is to talk to you about some recruitment strategies. I was talking to Cheryl, and she says, these people have great networks. And I said, yeah. And I'm absolutely sure they do. I do know in my typical work with boards, having a great network is often pretty shallow. And so I want to just show you a few strategies and talk to you about some ways to get just a little bit more targeted and a little bit deeper so that you can share with your board. So I really hope you find this meaningful. If there's anything that is missing from the conversation or questions, please just engage. All right, so I'm going to ask you, and I really do want this, take a minute and read these and think about which one or ones, it could be more than one, that resonates with you and why. So I'll give you just a minute. Anybody have a thought on one that really resonates with you or your school?
I think they all resonate. I think the one that kind of makes me think of my board and my experience currently the most is the every voice on the board is a bridge. Because I pull from many different school districts, so trying to always make sure we have representation of board members that are familiar with or live in those many different school districts helps have a better understanding of what is going on in all our communities, since our community is made up of many communities.
And that really is going to tie with the kind of composition that you insist upon at your school. Since you serve, your attendance zone is so broad. That's really important. Anybody else have one that particularly stands out to you for a reason?
I would say for myself here in our school, the last statement in the realm of decision making, the collective wisdom, in particular, because we employ like a bottom up approach in terms of decision making, and so getting our staff, fully immersed and on board. We obviously get automatic and natural buy-in in terms of decisions that are being made, and so I think that has been extremely effective in our organization.
And that's all of wisdom, the more experiences that they have, the more, experience and experiences and provides even greater wisdom, right? So yeah, anybody else have have one that stands out to you?
I would say number two, the board rich in diversity fosters a culture of empathy and innovation. And because we specialize in innovation and hands-on learning, so that it reaches out into our community that which we serve, like you were saying, number of different school districts.
And if you think about it, if you have a board that is all the same, if you have a particular population of student or even a singular student that has a different background from those individuals, it becomes much harder for them to stakeholder. And so that diversity provides an opportunity to better meet the needs of those folks. Any other final statements on this page? I love all of them, so I could not pick one. But any other final thoughts?
I think that there's an interconnection, between all of them. There's, obviously which one you may prioritize, but, like the realm of decision making, I also picked that one too. It's connected with diversity and governance, and they all kind of like play off of each other. But obviously you have to, I think, figure out like what's your North Star, which one is the most important that you're trying to achieve. But they all are important, it seems like, and connected.
Absolutely, for different reasons. So I want to talk about board constitution for a minute. And you need to know that the list that I have here is not intended to be all inclusive, nor is it meant to be so that, oh my gosh, we don't have number 6. That's not the intent of this. The intent is to help you think broadly about capacity. And every school might, and your needs may change over time. So there might come a time where you really, really need a fundraiser because let's say you have a capital campaign or something on the horizon. And so you're like, in 2 years, we are going to build a new building. And so we really need a strong fundraiser at this time in our life cycle of our school. And so it's important to know the context of where you are in that life cycle is really, really important. There are definitely some positions on here that are more important than others, right? So what do you think what do you think are the ones that are probably mainstays no matter where you are? Which one of those that are listed in pink do you think you should probably always have on your board?
Hi, Kelly. Good morning, everybody. So this is my personal bias, but I think it's super important to have somebody with some finance chops on the board.
Totally, absolutely agree with you. I mean, and listen, that it doesn't necessarily mean they have to be an accountant, you know, a CPA. You can have folks that have business experience, that have MBAs, or have enough financial experience to guide, but that means that you've got to meet the need with that somewhere else. I do strongly encourage you to have someone with specific financial training, but at the very least, you should have a CFO with that. What else? Anybody else have any? Any other thoughts of what you got to have on that board?
Yeah, if I can add, you know, it's kind of difficult to to name anyone in particular outside of the financial reporting, but obviously governance. I think it's important for them to have an understanding of their role and responsibilities and being the governing body, right, of our organizations.
It definitely helps having experience, having served on another board somewhere. It is important to know that serving on a charter school board is not always exactly like serving on a different nonprofit board or even, you know, for-profit boards. And so, but governance experience definitely helps. I was recently sort of in dire straits. They were about to not be renewed and they needed some risk mitigation and some strategic assistance. And I started digging into their board composition, and the school leader is just deeply irritated. And, you know, and I did a lot of interviews with her in the operational assessment, you know, lots of time with her. And it really boiled down to people on the board did not understand what her job was. They weren't educators, not one of them school. And so they really didn't have a deep enough understanding of how school operations work to guide and support and make the decisions they needed to make. And so it was causing a lot of challenges in her ability to do her job. So, you know, having someone on the board that has been in a leadership position, or at the very least has been in education to some degree and in some capacity, I think important. I don't know. Do you agree or disagree with that? And it's okay.
I absolutely agree. You know, what I would also add is I think there's a number of specifically charter school boards who are composed with a number of parents, right, without any experience serving on any type of board or governing body for that matter, not even just nonprofit. And unfortunately, most of their decision
I
making,
want to come back to
most
that
of
comment,
charge,
and
yeah.
I totally, totally agree. And it's nationwide problem, and it's difficult. And so I do want to talk about that in a minute. I also want to talk about legal and regulatory. You know, a lot of schools have attorneys on their board, and that's great. I think an attorney brings a particular lens to the board, a different way of thinking about things. They can serve as a risk management, so they can sometimes serve in that risk management role out of hot water. But a lot of schools try to use someone with legal experience on their board as their attorney, and you need to make sure that does not happen. It creates all kinds of ethical and risk for them. They need to be careful not to be your board attorney. You need an attorney that is what they are retained to do for you, so that there is not a conflict for them professionally, because there can be, not always, but there can be. So again, it really depends. The life cycle of your school will change. There are other categories that may not be on this list. Okay. The point is that the capacity is all the right skills for your school at that moment in time, for you. Diverse. What does diverse mean? Tell me, like, when you think of diversity, how do you define diversity?
Diverse backgrounds, which can be, you know, cultural, racial, and obviously expertise, which we have here. Um, Based on what your needs are, you know, diversity may look differently in terms of what it means to get somebody else who's not already in the existing skill set that's on your board.
Right.
So I think it's all encompassing.
Absolutely. Diversity has to do with ethnicity, and that is just absolutely not the case. There are all kinds of ways of being diverse as a board. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Independent, this kind of gets back. What does it mean by independent?
So my take on that is, you know, if I'm the school leader and founder, that I don't have my cousin Joe and my wife and my neighbor as my board, right? That I've got folks that have a disinterested relationship with the school. They want it to succeed, but they have no financial interest or controlling interest in any of the school's operations or assets.
Yeah, that's true. It also, and I think this gets back to, who was it that made the comment about the parent? I'm sorry, I can't see y'all. You know, in having parents serve on your board, it creates a natural conflict of interest. Not in every case, not in every way, but if you have too many parents on your board, it makes it difficult for them to be independent and to make independent decisions that are not driven by their own priority for their kid. Because you're basically asking them to, legally, the school is their time, their kid's their first priority. So it just creates a natural conflict. And so to the extent you can sort of balance out with more community members and less, it really protects the school. I feel really strongly about that. I do believe parents need a strong, deep voice in their school, but there are all kinds of ways to do that. So that do not create a conflict. And of course, independent from one another. You get you get people pulling in or best friends. And then when you get people that are that tight together, it creates a problem. Highly trained, obviously y'all do Act 55 training, but not just Act 55. Like helping your boards plan a professional development plan for themselves every year, where you invite speakers and they attend conferences, go to the coalition conference and watch podcasts together and provide some articles and both formal and informal training that you can plan for that is going to help build capacity in different areas. So even though that might be their background, it does build their capacity. And then of course, onboarding properly, making sure they know. I work with a lot of schools that have some, you know, so I do a lot of risk mitigation. And so walked in, got a call from a board member who went for training with me. I just did a very basic training and I mentioned bylaws, and after the session, she came in and she said, "What? I've never seen our bylaws." Now, this lady had been on this board for a year. Not one member of the board had seen the bylaws. She'd not seen the charter contract. She'd not seen the policies. I'm sitting there thinking, my goodness, you know, how are you functioning? But she was not onboarded. They were not onboarded at all. It was kind of hoarded by the founder, and it was very problematic. And so we've been working through that onboarding, right? Helping them get that initial training to understand their roles and responsibilities and how to have their voice and be empowered to serve and fulfill their legal obligations. So, and then, you know, so we talked about that. Uncompensated, typically nonprofit charter boards are not compensated, except for reasonable reimbursements. So I want to get in here. I want you to think about your board, okay? I want you to click any on here that is really lacking in. And you can pick as many as you need to. Let's just get an idea of where everybody is. And every single board would have things. So don't feel any, I've never had a board where they didn't have gaps. So don't worry. people to see the choices.
And Kelly, I just reposted the link because Mandy, I'm not sure if you were able to see it in the chat when you arrived. So that link is what everyone is working with to do the polls and so on.
Welcome, Mandy. All righty, thanks. Okay. All right, almost there. I think I've heard from all the boards here. So let's share the results and talk about them. What do you notice? Any notices? Where's our gap as a sector?
Can you explain, like when I see 17.6, are these all percentages?
Yeah, just based on,
Okay, okay, thank you.
what do you think? Do you notice anything?
I mean, it looks like fundraising and ethnic diversity representative of school
Sure.
are the two most popular. I know me in particular at our school, I selected fundraising, and I would say that would definitely be my top choice in terms of a lack of understanding or skill set that many of our
Yeah.
board members do not possess.
Now, again, it could be that y'all are in a season of your school where that's not quite as, or you might be flush with money and you're like, we really don't need to spend a lot of time on that. And we don't need to dedicate a seat to that. We really need X seat instead to fill it. So, I mean, it's not a deficit if you don't need a fundraising person, but I don't know very many schools that are flush with money. So having someone that has experience with is typically a useful skill, or at least someone that's a mover and shaker and has a lot of influence in building key champions for you. And definitely ethnic diversity. And again, in talking about that, you really want your boards to reflect your community. So if you have a community of a particular demographic, it may, I mean, not that you don't need some diversity, but you might need, to represent your whole community, you may need more predominantly that demographic of your community. So, take it with a grain of salt, but certainly that's what I typically see as the two areas that are the most lacking. So I want to do this little, can you? Ruffed grouse. Did y'all like that I used your state bird? Ruffed grouse charter school, nestled in the heart of a vibrant and culturally diverse middle Pennsylvania community, prides itself on the commitment to innovative and fostering an inclusive environment for students from all backgrounds. The school's mission is to prepare students for a rapidly changing world by providing them with cutting-edge technology and science programs, combined with strong emphasis on community engagement and advocacy for social justice. The student body is quite diverse, consisting of 82% Black and Brown students, 15% Caucasian, and 3% other ethnicities, 78% economically disadvantaged, 19% English language learners, 13% special education, 10% gifted and talented. It should say RSCA aims to be a beacon of educational excellence and equity. Student outcomes have remained strong compared to the local district, except a significant gap in the performance in Hispanic and special education subgroups that have lagged for more than 3 years. The school operationally has fulfilled its obligations, except for one finding on the most recent audit that they have already corrected. The school has remained sustainable, but has struggled to fundraise for some key the 3D printers and science lab equipment, such as class sets of microscopes, centrifuges, and incubators. Enrollment has stayed somewhat stable, but the school did lose students during the pandemic that they have not yet recouped, and it no longer boasts the wait list it once carried. Okay, so what I would like to do is I would like you to pretend for a moment that you are on this board. And we're a small enough group that I think we can just do this together. But I want you to look at the layout of this board and pretend that it is yours. I want you to look at the context of the case study and think about where you think the gaps are. And if you've got an open position, you have one open seat, okay? Who should that person be? Who should that person be? I'll give you about a minute or two to jot yourself down some notes and some thoughts, and then we can kind of talk through them. Okay. Let's do a little, did you have time to look at it? Do y'all need me to send you a copy of it so you can keep looking at it? I can send you a copy of the case study if you need it. All right, any notices?
I don't know if I missed this, but what grade levels does the school serve?
Oh, that's a good question. It's not in there. But that's a great question. And it wouldn't matter, it could matter in the context.
Right,
let's
and
say-
so obviously member C
Let's
has
say
a
it's a K-12
school.
Let's say it's
Okay.
K-12. You're right, though. I have to fix my case study.
Yeah, and then specifically in terms of losing students and their waiting lists, it would be nice to know what grade levels like have there been trends and what particular grade levels they've had, lower retention or higher turnover. Then also, kind of what's the composition of the students on a waiting list as well. Kind of what grade levels are they in or were they in prior to that waiting list somewhat being diminished would be very helpful. But in my
How does that?
opinion, with the data that has been presented, I believe a community outreach specialist, so member E, would be very beneficial to this school in terms of
Okay.
student recruitment.
Person. So let me make sure that I clarify the chart. The chart is your current board and you're on that board. You're one of those
sorry.
you're A through H. You're
Got
A
it.
through H. So take a minute to analyze your board. Pick a person you are, it doesn't matter. And we're trying to fill, I wasn't clear on that. That's my fault. I'm sorry. We're trying to fill member I on your board. So you think you need another community outreach person?
Honestly, I mean, I would kind of change that. I mean, I would say definitely what is missing on here, and maybe this level of detail is just not included. I don't see any parents. And so kind of contradicting, what I said previously, but I think it is important to have at least a parent, one parent representative on the board. And then I think that person, along with the community folk, would be able to give you a pulse on, things that are happening within your school community in general, in terms of why parents may not be applying, right, or interested in your school any longer. and then in regards to the experiences of the existing or the current parents and our students and families would be very helpful to know.
Okay, so you're thinking you need a parent. What are the gaps? Where do you see this board being unbalanced or missing? Gaps or what do you notice?
Well, is that in terms of like the case study or just the makeup of the board? I mean, because I can identify things, skills that the board,
Well, sure.
could use, but
Within the
specifically in regards
context
to
of, yes.
challenges of the case study.
Yes. This is the case study of this school. That's your school. You're one of those members right there in those profiles. One of those profiles is yours, doesn't matter. Where are they unbalanced? And where do you feel like they need to prioritize searching and recruiting for a new member? What are the characteristics that they may be looking for?
Well, I'd like to take a stab at this, if it's okay, Kelly. I'm looking at the demographics for the school and for the board, and I'm wondering if someone who is Hispanic and fluent in Spanish might be helpful. And then also if they have marketing expertise.
Okay. Anybody have an alternative perspective? The answer to this, by the way, guys, is there's not a right answer to it. I've done this activity numerous times, and I usually put people in groups and they're around the wall, and all the groups have things in common, but also some different priorities based on how they prioritize things here. Might be interesting to move on to does everybody have in their head what they think that's the gaps are or the imbalances, or do you need to keep looking at this? Because what I'd like you to do is work together. I mean, not work together, but work for just a minute independently to write who you think the next person should be. What are the characteristics or backgrounds or do you think is needed? You can type it, you can write it. You have an opportunity to do that, and we're going to see what that looks like. Oh. You can have more than one characteristic, by the way. So if you you may have several factors that you would be looking for in a next candidate. Awesome. Great. Love it. Jesse, is that a female?
I sure hope so. I never won any awards for my artistic ability, so
That's great.
apologies.
you saw a gap in females. So you're like, it really doesn't matter what the other backgrounds are. It's got to be we really need to look and make sure that our candidate pool has a lot of females to choose from. That doesn't mean that's all you would choose from, because obviously, and we're going to talk about that in a quick second, but certainly you would want to make sure that you source lots of female options for consideration. Okay, so I'll read some of these that look like they're done. And Terrence says, I would be an educator with, member I would be an educator with similar community experience, a member of color with special education. Okay. And Terrence, what was your rationale for that?
Sorry, my mouse is playing tricks on me here. No, looking at they lost a lot of students that weren't coming back in, and having 13% special education. A lot of boards don't have a lot of experience with special education, and there's been a rise since the pandemic of OHI or any diagnosis for special education, as well as moving forward. And I think we all know that special education is going to lead enrollment in terms of scheduling. And so having someone of that background would be helpful.
Thank you. Dara says that she would choose someone with marketing and strategic communications, maybe an African-American female candidates. She thought special ed was also important. So both of you came up with some similarities and some differences. Doing an exercise like this and guiding your school to analyze themselves, the composition of your board. Do any of y'all do this? Do y'all sit down and really take apart your board and what they look like? And I don't mean visually necessarily, but compositionally what they look like and text of your school. Do y'all do that in any way currently?
Yes, we do. Here
You do?
at charter school, yes.
Do you do it similarly, or do you do it in a different way?
Yeah, well, it was actually prompted from a strategic planning process that we had undergone back in 2019. And we wanted to ensure that, both our board and our staff makeup was in alignment or reflective of our student population.
So
And body.
was composition part of that? I'm sorry, that background and experiences, was that part of that composition analysis?
It was specifically as related to our innovation, right? Being an entrepreneurial focused school. And so we needed to ensure that there were, X number of individuals on the board, who had experience as business owners or entrepreneurs. And then there were several other categories, right, that, we needed to check to ensure. And so then we just kind of launched a recruitment, sort of focus and campaign to identify individuals to kind of meet these needs that we had.
So, have you now embedded that into your annual board recruitment process?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So one of the questions I typically get was, well, how do you do this without discriminating? And so, moving on from here, not saying I'm only going to hire Hispanic people and that is it. That is absolutely not the goal here. The goal here is to help you to identify and source in a very intentional way. So you're going to look at who it is that you feel like you need, and you're going to source very broadly to open it up, because you obviously want to have lots of candidate choices. And you also want to market very narrowly. There are some ways that you can do this, and I'm gonna just talk you through, and I'll show you LinkedIn in just a minute. But alumni associations are a great place to go, and I'm not just talking about board alumni associations. I'm talking about alumni associations of particular things. For example, if you are a I can't think of if there is like a sorority or fraternity that like my son's a pilot. If y'all were an airline school, we've got schools that are airline schools here in the South, charter schools. If you are, maybe you would want to go with the fraternity that is affiliated with, you know, the airlines and pilots. You know, something like that. So when I say alumni association, I mean it broadly. Some other, you know, nonprofit and youth serving organizations, not necessarily people that serve in those organizations, but it could be that you guys, we are looking for someone that has some experience in education or serving students. And do you have anybody in your network that you think would be a really good candidate? So being able to reach out to them. A lot of folks don't know this, but companies have some companies have departments that are corporate social responsibility departments. And that's what they do. They promote community engagement. You have other companies that don't have actual departments, but they sort of have a focus and they definitely encourage their employees. Home Depot's an example. They really encourage involvement on boards and in other ways in the community. And so when you can source those, that's a great thing to do. I did this activity a little while back. It wasn't that long ago. And someone was using ChatGPT and they did a search of Georgia corporate social responsibility departments, and it listed companies for them that they could go to. I actually tried to do that for you guys, and I didn't find any in Pennsylvania. But that doesn't mean nationally there aren't some, and that those national companies actually don't have locations there where you are. You know, here's some other volunteer organizations. Again, it may not be people that actually work at those organizations, but you could, you know, sponge off. Social impact incubators are good places to start. Volunteer matching programs, you can go online and on LinkedIn, things like that, and they have volunteer matching. There's a number, you can do a search of volunteer match programs and they will pop up. Diversity focused professional groups, you know, the Hispanic Women's Association, things like that, where you can go and talk to those people and say, listen, like we really have a gap on our board and we're looking of candidates, and we're hoping that you can help connect us with some opportunities. State Bar, not Georgia, of any community service clubs, the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce, places of worship, all places you can go to find different folks. Have y'all ever heard of network mining? No. Are you there? I can't see you. I was trying to view. Okay, you got the screen. Thank you. I couldn't tell what you were doing there. The network mining, I wanted to get Cheryl, I needed to get to and share my screen with them because I want to show them something real fast. It's really fast. I really wish we were in person, guys. So please tabs. I want to show you on LinkedIn. Let's say you had a marketing gap. I can do a search of marketing. I can do a search of people. I can filter and say, I want my first connections, people that I know directly, that I feel comfortable talking to. And it helps me to narrow down in my own network, because a lot of people that network try to think off the top of their brain who they know. Well, if that's all that, you're going to forget a million people that you probably have some connection to professionally at some time in your life. And so using a tool like this to network mine allows you to go a level deeper. The other thing that you can do is, if you do this as a board and you take the time to sit down together, you can sometimes double your influence. So I'll give you an example. One of my associates used to work at Coca-Cola. He's a CEO now at school, and he used to be an executive at Coke. And I also used to work at Coca-Cola. And so we found some common folks that we knew at Coca-Cola together. And when we approached that person, we were able to say, hey, we've got two other people with a connection to Coca-Cola. Ehab worked at Coke and I did as well. And we were looking, we thought that, you know, we've been away from it for a really long time, but we were hoping you might consider or connect us with someone at Coca-Cola that could come and. So now we have a double connection that gives them a double reason to participate in our board. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm gonna stop. There is another, darn it. Share screen. Sorry, I got off too soon. There's another, have y'all ever used Alignable? Anybody connected on Alignable? Alignable is kind of like LinkedIn. It's not as robust. And I don't think a lot of people are on it yet, but it's coming. I mean, it's growing. And so
Yeah.
you just do it the same way. Like again, they needed a marketing person. So again, you do it the same way, marketing, and you go down and you can filter it. You can filter the people. Did it come up? You can filter the people by connections and do the same sort of thing. So this just is a way to network mine, using social media tools to do that. Again, you can do first degree, and that sort of thing. So, I don't want to.
I just started using that this year.
You just started with? You did?
Alignable. Yeah.
You did? You just
Mhm.
joined it. So it really does help you untap resources. I mean, as well as people think that they network, most people just do what's on the top of their brain. And, you know, you need to go deeper than that. You will find much better, more qualified candidates that are more diverse by looking, because you can skim down that list and go, oh my gosh, you know, we needed a, you know, and so you can just source more candidates by going bit deeper, if that makes any sense, and find those intersections and develop a targeted strategy. I was going to show you this. I wanted to do an exercise, but I want to be mindful of your time, so we won't do this. But so your recruitment plan might look something like this. You would work as a board to do your composition, where you take it apart, just like some of you do and some of you don't, but you take it apart, you'd pick your recruiting priorities, and then you'd sit down, and as a team, you would basically mind, where are the places that would make a lot of sense for us to go to source these candidates? And then you divvy it up and you start making the connections. You set yourself a timeline, you set yourself a process up. And this is kind of how you approach it to do a very targeted recruitment plan to fill you and to better compose your board. Does anybody do anything like this?
I just have a general question, if you don't mind me asking.
Sure.
So I hear you talking about, you know, things that we should do. I'm just curious, I think everyone on here is part of the administrative side of a school. How closely involved are you with your board on this process? Because this is one of the passion projects I've been trying to get our board to diversify a little bit more and offer my services as far as marketing and community engagement to connect them with potential candidates. But they've been very just wanting to do it on their own, which just kind of feeds the problem that we're starting to see, where it's just parents inviting more parents and friends inviting more friends. And I'm just curious what the involvement is between the administration and the board in this whole process.
I mean, I really think that your job is to help facilitate them doing it. You know, giving them suggestions for resources and process. Sometimes you doing a little bit of training. Like, guys, let's take, you know, guiding them on how to do it. You don't have to be the person to give them all the resources. You can say, I have a few, but let me show you how you can use your networks to do it. So I think you become a facilitator more than anything, rather than you actually trying to do the work, because they don't want, really probably don't want you to do the work. I don't know why, if you have something to add, but if you're facilitating them doing the work, it's just as good. So does that?
Yeah, like I'd love them to hear this whole presentation. I'm just in my back of my head trying to think about what's the best way to approach this, you know, from an administrative part, or is it a conflict of interest? And, you know, it's something that they need to do
absolutely not a
internally.
conflict. It is your job to help them to do this. Now, what I would probably do to approach it is, whenever your board, the time for your board elections come up, when you get to thinking about, hey guys, we need to sit down and start talking about this. I went to a training they did some really things that might help us and gave us
Mhm.
some tools that I'm going to show you in a minute. And so I'd like to share those with you and kind of walk you through the exercise that we did and so that we can do it with our own board. And so then it's kind of taking it away from you. You're imparting something that you learned. You're using a tool that someone gave you. And it kind of guides them through that process to do it in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So in time, we will move through here. I don't think you need that anyway. I wanted to make sure that you understood and that there are two types of boards, some that are appointed, some that are elected, and there are benefits and drawbacks to both. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize that there's another way to do it than the way they do it. So, and that might be something that you discuss when y'all start talking about, you know, your laws. We do it this way. Maybe we need to talk about another way. You know, they're good and bad to both. So you just had to figure out what works for your school, but it's definitely something that should be part of your conversation at least once in looking at your bylaws. And then finally, making sure that you have a codified transition plan for onboarding people in and out. And I've given you some tools. This is a slide that sort of gives you an overview of the things to the resource things that I gave you something to consider. I don't see very many charter schools that have a codified process for transitioning. Do any of you have one? Okay. So it's kind of important because that's how you know folks actually, you know, come in getting what they need and leave and give up what they shouldn't have anymore. So want to close out here. Could you answer one of what you're thinking right now? What's still rolling around in your head, or is there any key points that are calling you to action as you walk away today? Anybody have a thought?
See, I was in a situation where the board was already selected when I became the CEO, and because I was here as the principal first. And so we do have a diversified board members, educational background, legal, some legal, but more finance, as well as manufacturing, which, you know, we're a school of innovation and different pathways for jobs for students after they graduate. So we do have, what I was thinking was that they already had a selection process, which they went out and recruited. And then they would, you know, the board president would run it by me. And so that's kind of where we're at in the selection process. We do have full 7 board members. And I like what you talked about having bylaws because I haven't seen them yet, but I'm definitely going to take a look at them. But I like what you had with you had the chart where you could actually onboarding and exiting. I like having that.
Well, anybody else have something they'd like to speak to on to end our time together? Anybody gonna go do anything? Mandy, what are you gonna do? I see you shaking your head.
No, I'm very grateful for the tools and things. I'm going to present it to the rest of our admin team. I'm assuming you're going to share them all with us that we can utilize. That would be wonderful. Because it is something that we've been talking about. And, you know, I love the idea of, you know, we're starting to move towards like fixing our calendar. This is when we start the recruitment process for the board. This is when we do our onboarding. This is when we do our Act 55. So everybody, you know, knows exactly when those times are coming up. So I think this will be a good lead in to taking that calendar and doing it a little bit more strategically in the front end of that process. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Here's a QR code. And if I need to, I can also put it in the chat to the little folder. There are 4 things in there. Well, hold on. One is just a resource for transition. And listen, it's probably not perfect, but it gives you a place to start to get some ideas of sort of things you may want to consider in your own. I gave you the case study if you want to do an exercise with your own board to get them to practice to kind of, you can. And then I gave you a board composition checklist that's blank, so you can kind of do that with your own people if you don't have one. So hopefully that is helpful to you. The last thing, did everybody have a chance to get this? Do you need me to send you the link in the chat? I'll do that too. Let me share a link, copy a link. I'm gonna make sure everybody can open it. Yep, copy the link. Let me do that right this minute for you, so you all have a little something to help you out. I don't like to go to trainings when I don't have anything I can take away. I want to be able to use something. Final thing is, if you need me, this is a link to my website and my phone number. If you have questions, need support, I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to help your board. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve Pennsylvania. I've kind of grown to love you guys. So I thank you so much for serving and for allowing me to serve.
Can I just
Thank
ask
you, Kelly.
one quick thing? I just clicked on the QR code and there's a few documents that look like we don't have permission. If you could just.
I can open them up. Did I not open up
Available.
screen access? I will do that for you. Give me about 2 or 3 minutes after we
Yeah.
get off the call and I'll
No
have that.
hurry.
Not a worry. Thank you for letting me know. I always
Thank
think
you.
that the folder opens it and sometimes it just doesn't. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kelly, for this presentation. And thank you, each and every one of you, for attending. Please remember, we'd like to have the survey completed by March 27th for the board composition. And these and other trainings like this are going to be rolled out to you. Jesse, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Nothing from me, Cheryl. Just thank you to Kelly and wishing everybody a happy weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Yes. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
So good to see you, Jesse. Thank you.